The Premier, Devin Budden.
Thank you. I move that Ms. Kate Cadigan, member for the District Humber Bay of Islands, do take the chair as House Speaker. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say nay. The motion carries unanimously.
Her Honor, the Honorable Minister Studley.
Hello. Hello. Okay, I guess everyone can sit down. Hey, thank you very much. Do you stay?
We stay.
Oh, okay. Okay, everyone else?
Everyone else can sit.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. What a privilege it is to be here. I'm representing the Lieutenant Governor, so representing the King in England. I had to jump at the opportunity, so thank you so much for the invitation. Welcome to St. John's, for those of you not from St. John's. I'm not from St. John's, but I represent a district in St. John's, so it's become a second home for me. So hopefully some of you continue on. I've recognized a lot of familiar faces. Thank you so much for your interest in Youth Parliament. I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Tamana and Cameron, who are representing Mount Sion. That's my district. The economic powerhouse of Mount Sion, which is part of St. John's and Elizabeth Park and Paradise. When I was in high school, I was in Youth Parliament. I enjoyed the experience very much. We used to do our debates in the basement of the Holiday Inn. So this was quite an upgrade, I think, for you guys to be in the chamber. I remember we did go to City Hall for, I think, a debate or a meeting in the chamber. And one thing I remember from Youth Parliament is that we went to see Danny Williams at the time, and I'm not sure if he was Premier or Leader of the Opposition, but we went to his office, and in my head it seems like a movie. I'm sure it wasn't actually like that, but it was really dark, and he had his big sealskin coat on. It was quite an image I have in my head of going to Danny Williams' office. And I remember Danny Williams telling us, you know, don't let anyone from Toronto or Montreal or New York make you think that they're smarter than you. Don't ever feel that they are better business than you. Don't ever feel like they're better negotiators than you, because they're not. And I remember thinking, of course, Danny Williams, of course they're smarter than we are. Of course they're better negotiators than we are. I'm from Grand Falls, Windsor, Newfoundland, Labrador. Of course someone from New York is smarter than I am. And I just remember thinking that, and I thought that for a very long time. And I was in the UK I lived in the UK for a while, and I lived and worked with people who went to Oxford and Cambridge. Like, we were all in cubicles next to each other, these people who went to the University of Oxford, the University of Cambridge. And one day I had this like, oh my God, these people are not better able to do their jobs than I am. And that was a big moment of realization for me, and I was like, oh, Danny Williams was right. These people, just because someone's from, you might be from a small town or even from St. John's. St. John's is the metro area is a pretty small area globally. But I think we have an amazing education system. The education you get at Memorial University is first class, or anywhere else you choose to study, if you choose to study. So I guess I would echo my learning from Danny Williams at the time. Don't let anyone think that just because they're from some big city or another country that they're more able to negotiate, smarter, better at their job than you are, because it is completely false. So that's one thing I hope you take away. And then I guess just here in the chamber for a minute, so I think the job of legislators, I've been here 6 years now, it's an incredible privilege to represent people of Mount Sion and Newfoundland and Labrador. And we create laws in here that change people's lives. Some of the laws are really mundane, but some of them are incredibly important. We can change people's lives for good or for bad. I'm not in a medical field, but I remember, I used to work in insurance, and we used to tell each other, it's not life or death. We're not doing like heart surgery. Premier Fury would be doing real surgery, or Minister Howell always talks about, I could be saving 5 lives here. I got to make my time worth it in the House. But sometimes we can save lives. Just one I think about now is topical speed cameras. And so around the province in the coming months, you'll start to see speed cameras come up. So that's something that I championed. And it took 2 rounds of legislation. So there was 1 round in 2019, and then another, we had to make some more changes. And I think we had to make a 3rd round of changes to the regulations, because by the time when you have a plan or an idea, you change the law, then you're working with justice and public safety, you're working with the lawyers, you're working with the judges, and they actually go from conception, the policy idea, to implementation required us, I think, 3 versions of changes. And now this summer, we'll finally be seeing speed cameras. And globally, research has shown that speed cameras do reduce speeds, and they do reduce accidents and save lives. So it's one just example of how you can, save lives in your roles in here. And you really impact people's lives, like, the amount of money they have, the disposable income they have, just the economy, everything I would say the most important things in Newfoundland and Labrador are driven from decisions that are made in this chamber. And you are a very important part of that. The last bill we passed in the House this sitting was the Loan Act, Bill 110. And the bill was to get a loan for $4.1 billion. And I was just sitting in my chair over there in the 2nd row, and just realizing that, we're all here, 40 of us, my friend, these are my friends now, we're colleagues, and the 40 of us in this chamber, because we voted, I just remember realizing this like surreal moment, because we've now, the 40 of us have voted for this loan bill for $4.1 billion, because of this institution and what it means in Canada, and because of all the checks and balances and law and all these things that are kind of customs and institutions in our democracy, there's a bunch of bankers in New York and Toronto who are going to give us $4.1 billion cash just because the 40 of us voted for that. And it was like a mind-blowing, just further entrenching, I guess, how important, and this is the foundation, I guess, or a significant part of our democracy, and you here are an important part of that. And the legislatures in all the provinces across Canada, and then the House of Commons in Ottawa, we make up this system that really makes the country work. So those are my words of wisdom, I guess, today. So I hope you have an excellent debate. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for participating. I hope you can make mistakes, don't worry, and we all make mistakes all the time. We can always change the login. We can always go back in and change the login. But good luck, and I hope you all consider running, because we need good, excellent Newfoundlanders and Labradorians to make sure that our province remains successful and prosperous. So thank you very much. Maybe someday I'll be back about that. You may sit.
I move to present the following address to the minister. Sorry. I move that the speech of the minister be taken into consideration now that this order of precedence over all others until disposed of.
I will now open debate on speech from the throne. See no one rise. We will move to a vote. All in favor of adopting the speech from the throne, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Fabulous. We will now move on to orders of routine business. First, we have communications. This is the opportunity that you get to introduce yourself to the House and all those watching at home. And we will start on the government side. With the member for Waterford Valley.
My name is Veronica Sawyer. I'm from Placentia St. Mary's, and this session I will be representing the Waterford Valley District. I am 19 years old, attending Mount Allison University in Sackville, New Brunswick. I hold my private pilot license, and I am so happy to be back for my second session of Youth Parliament.
The member for St. John's West.
Hi, my name is Alpita Patro. I am a grade 11 student from Gonzaga High School here in St. John's, and I am from Windsor Lake, and I will be here representing the district of St. John's West. This is my very first Youth Parliament session, and I'm very excited to continue with this debate. Thank you.
The Honorable the Premier.
Hello, my name is Devin Budden. I am the president of Newfoundland and Labrador Youth Parliament, and on behalf of the 59th annual session, I would like to say thank you to all those who are here and all those watching at home. I just graduated from political science and memorial and looking forward to seeing what we can do. Thanks.
The Minister for Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is McKenna Jackson. I'm 22 years old. I am from Cavendish in the district of Carbonear Trinity Bay de Verde, and I am in my 5th year at Memorial University. This is my 3rd session at Youth Parliament and my first time on the government bench, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Minister of Healthcare. Transportation, sorry.
Thank you, Speaker. My name is Eric Motzer. This is my 2nd session, and this is my first time on a government bench. And I wish everyone a hopeful and enjoyable session. Thank you.
The member for Borgia-LaPoille.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Jessica Warren. I'm 22. I study environment and sustainability at Grenfell campus. This is my second youth parliament, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
The member for Placentia West Bellevue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Samantha Gillis. I'm from the beautiful Humber Bay of Islands. I just finished my first year at the Western Regional School of Nursing. This is my third session with NOIP, and I'm looking forward to a great debate.
Member for St. George's Humber.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Aga, and I'm the representative for St. George's Humber. I am 20 years old, and I'm currently finishing up my degree in political science, and I'm excited for what Newfoundland and Labrador Youth Parliament will do for me.
The member for Corner Brook.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Gloria Hanna Vincent. I am 19 years old. I just completed my first year of nursing in Western Regional School of Nursing. I'm from the beautiful Humber Bay of Islands, and today I'm representing Corner Brook, and I'm so excited for a great debate. Thank you.
The member for Lewisport.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Gregory Rutinyan. I'm 23 years old. This is my first session with Youth Parliament, and I'm very excited to be here.
The member for Mount Scio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am Nathan Nolan. I am from Placentia West Bellevue. Today I'm representing Mount Scio, and I'm very excited for my first debate here at Youth Parliament.
The member for Buren Grand Bank.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Kelsey Senior. I am 24 years old. I'm representing my beautiful home of Buren Grand Bank. I graduated from Memorial University with an honors degree in behavioral neuroscience in 2023, but I'm currently doing a master's in health ethics. And I'm very much looking forward to my last session with all of you.
The member for Exploits.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm Al-Hafiz Usman. I'm 22 years old, and I'm going to Discovery Center for Adult Basic Education, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. Thank you.
The member for Fortune Bay Cape Lahoon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Benjamin Wheaton. I have the honor to represent the beautiful district of Fogwell and Cape Frills out home. I also sit on the board of directors for Newfoundland Labrador Young Liberals and Newfoundland Labrador Youth Parliament. This is my last session. It's hard to say goodbye, but I'm excited for a really good one, and I can't wait for lots of good debate. Thank you.
The member for Harbor Grace Portagrave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm Barbara Korotnicka. I'm from Montpearl, Southland, and I'm grade 12 student at Donald High School, and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
The member for Harbor, Maine.
Hello, my name is Jillian Dixon. I'm 21 years old. I'm currently studying political science at Memorial University. I'm from Deer Lake, but today I will be representing Harbor, Maine. Thank you.
The member for Cape St. Francis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Eric Steele. I am 22 years old. I hold a Bachelor of Music and a Bachelor of Arts from Memorial University, and I am going to be studying theology at Oxford University in the fall. And I'm from St. John's East, and I'm representing Cape St. Francis.
The Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Avery Patey. I am from the beautiful district of St. Barb Lance Meadows. I'm honored to be your leader of the official opposition for this session. I also sit on the board of directors as director of finance. I'm so excited to have such a great session with you all, and can't wait to see what kind of debate today brings.
The Critic of Justice and Public Safety.
Good morning, everyone. My name is JC Matthews. I'm currently enrolled in nursing at University of New Brunswick. I'm so excited for what this session brings. I am from the Humber Bay of Islands, and yeah.
Critic for Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Liam Rowe. I'm 17 years old, and I'm from the beautiful district of Carbonear Trinity Bay de Verde. And I'm so excited to be sitting for my first time on the opposition benches as the critic for transportation and infrastructure. Thank you.
The member for Labrador West.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Leah Patterson, and I'm the Director of Social Media for Newfoundland Labrador Youth Parliament. I recently graduated high school at Menahek, and in the fall I will be starting my Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. I am so glad that this year we have a second Labrador delegate, and she'll introduce herself, but I just had to mention it.
The member for Lake Melville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Samantha Newman. I am from Happy Valley Goose Bay, representing Lake Melville. I just recently graduated with my diploma in mental health and addictions, and this is my first time doing youth parliament, so I'm very excited.
The member for Bonavista.
Good morning. My name is Clark Warren, and I am from Grand Bank, but today I am representing Bonavista. This year I am graduating from John Burke High School.
The member for Virginia Waters Pleasantville.
Good morning. My name is Isaac House, and I'm from Virginia Waters Pleasantville, representing my own district. I'm 20 years old, and this is my 4th year at Youth Parliament, and I'm excited, so thank you.
The member for Ferryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cameron Short. I'm 23 years old. I'm entering my last year of studying political science at Memorial University, and this is my second Youth Parliament session, and I hope we have a great debate, everyone. Thank you.
The member for Grand Falls Windsor Buckins.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker, and good morning. My name is Jada White. I'm a 17-year-old student who attends Crescent Collegiate in grade 11, and this is my first year here in NLYP, and it's a pleasure to be here today.
The member for St. John's Center.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Marzan Mirza. I am a current graduate from Memorial University with a degree in Economics Cooperative. I actually did my work terms with the Department of Immigration under Minister Studi last year, and I'm currently working at the Learning Disabilities Association of Newfoundland and Labrador under the Adult Literacy Project and the READ program. Thank you so much, and this is my first and last Youth Parliament.
Now to introduce our page for the session.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Chase Mary. I'm from Paradise, and I will be your page this session. So if there's anything you need, like water, or if you need to deliver something to another member or to the speaker, you can simply wave me over, and I will be there to assist you in the best way that I can. Thank you very much.
Now to introduce our clerk.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Conway. I'm 22 years old. I'm currently studying sociology at Memorial University. I'm working right now as a summer student giving tours of the House of Assembly, and I also work as a page for the House of Assembly. And I'm very grateful to be a part of this, so thank you guys for including me.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate Cadigan, and I will be your speaker for this session. This is my 3rd session of NLIP and my 2nd on the board and my 2nd as speaker, and it is an honor and a privilege to serve as the speaker for the 59th session of the Newfoundland and Labrador Youth Parliament. I encourage you all throughout this week to be confident, share your ideas, your thoughts, and your passions, and that will be sure to lead to some fiery, exciting, and of course, respectful debate. Here's to the 59th session. We will now move on to government notices of motion. The Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to ask my kind Minister of Justice and Public Safety to present a bill on, a resolution concerning justice and public safety in Newfoundland and Labrador. Thank you.
All in favor of opening resolution on public justice and public safety, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Minister, you will have 15 minutes to present your resolution. The last 5 must be saved for closing remarks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Bear with me as I am a little nervous doing this first time around. Good morning, everyone. Today I rise in this Honourable House to present a resolution on justice and public safety. I see many instances in this province where we need to take steps to ensure the safety and equality of opportunity for everyone in this province. We've been seeing many drug overdoses in this province within the past few years, especially with 2024 having the most drug-related fatalities with 74 deaths. Any death resulting from drug overdose is unacceptable, and we need to do something to work towards decreasing those numbers. Following up with that we are seeing cocaine purity levels in this province of 94 to 96%, whereas only a few years ago, the purity levels were 15 to 20%. This is a serious problem that we need to address quickly and effectively. We see drug overdoses being addressed with naloxone kits. There are currently a few dozen sites across the province, distribution sites across the province, but, for example, the closest distribution site to me is 45 minutes away. Should people need that supply more, should they need it quickly, it should be more accessible. It would be wise to implement many more distribution sites, such as naloxone distribution sites across all municipalities in the province. With that, municipalities, according to the 2011 census of municipalities, was completed by 219 municipalities across the province. At that time, it accounted for 300,000 Newfoundlanders and Labradorians across our province, except for St. John's, which chose to not complete the census for fear of altering the results. So, as of that point, over 400,000 Newfoundlanders and Labradorians lived across municipalities in the province, which at that time would account for about 80% of the population. If we bring naloxone kits across all these municipalities to about 80% of the population, 80% of the population has access to life-saving equipment that may not be as accessible as it is currently. Following that, there have been numerous record-breaking, essentially, drug busts and weapon seizures in this province. Especially in January, I believe it was, there was they found a very dangerous substance for the first time in the province. And as mentioned before, cocaine purity levels have reached astronomical purity levels, which they were not that a few years ago. We need to do something about this now, as it is in the best interest for the public safety, for all citizens. One method that we can use to create a safer province is by implementing further security measures at both marine Atlantic crossings, so the Channel of Port aux Basques and Argentia ferries. I will mention in the, once I get through the, once I start breaking down the resolution, that we can implement measures such as detection dogs, further searches of passengers and their vehicles, and we can discuss the possibility of implementing portable or handheld X-ray machines. Anytime that I have been a passenger of Marine Atlantic, there has been little to no searching. There's been little to no security that I have seen. You just drive on with your vehicle, Do you have any vegetables? No, and you go on past. Who knows what people could have in any parts of their vehicles, on their person, and we need heightened security, especially where drugs and weapons are coming in and out of this province. Following that, dangerous driving is a bad habit in this province. I cannot list how many times within, I guess, the past month that I've witnessed a driver speeding or driving unsafely, essentially practicing unsafe driving behaviors. There is currently a program for speed cameras in Paradise and Mount Pearl, and in 2023, they caught over 90,000 speeding vehicles. There have been many studies that show that speed cameras can significantly reduce speeding and collisions, and I believe that we need to further the speed camera program across the entire province on the Trans-Canada Highway in areas that have been identified as high risk for dangerous driving or collisions, as well as in rural areas where roads seem to be empty, which not encourages, but there seem to be dangerous driving or long stretches of these empty rural roads. So now on to the actual resolution. Whereas assertive steps must be taken to ensure the safety and well-being of all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Whereas Newfoundland and Labrador have witnessed an increase in supply and potency of illegal substances, as well as an increased mortality rate resulting from the prevalence of illicit substances. Whereas Newfoundland and Labrador have witnessed an increase in the amount of firearms and an increase in armed and gun violence resulting in injuries. Whereas Newfoundland and Labrador should collaborate with Marine Atlantic to increase security searches of passengers and vehicles to reduce the influx and distribution of both illegal substances and illegal weapons. Whereas Newfoundland and Labrador must implement measures to catch and discipline drivers who break traffic laws. Therefore, we, the 59th session of the Newfoundland and Labrador Youth Parliament, do go on the record advocating that. 1. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will offer opioid overdose training as well as naloxone kits to more areas across the province. A. Those who work directly with the public, such as doctors, nurses, teachers, etc., will be offered opioid overdose training. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will cover the cost of transportation to and from training, as well as the salaries lost during this training. B. All municipalities will be offered training and a supply of naloxone kits. It will be encouraged for 3 town council members of all municipalities to be trained in opioid overdose measures at all times. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will cover the cost of transportation to and from training as well as the salaries lost during this training. C. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will start by budgeting $2 million towards both training and distributing more naloxone kits across the province. $1.5 million of this budget will go towards training of willing participants, and $500,000 of this budget will go towards purchasing and distributing more naloxone kits across the province, with emphasis across municipalities. D. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will devise an online and telephone application process to establish training across all municipalities and to make certain that all kinds of workers who interact directly with the public, are offered training. 2. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will partner with Marine Atlantic to increase security measures to reduce incoming and outgoing illicit substances, illegal firearms, and other weapons. A. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will set a preliminary budget of $2.5 million to hire additional full-time workers at the Channel-Port aux Basques ferry crossing and hire additional seasonal workers at the Argentia ferry crossing. This $2.5 million will be allocated for the next full operating year to hire additional workers, both full-time and seasonal, with monetary adjustments made if necessary. And the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will work with Marine Atlantic to determine the best hiring balance. B. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will work towards implementing detection dogs at both ferry crossings to locate illicit substances and illegal firearms. A starting budget of $500,000 will be set aside to bring in detection dogs and handlers in the next full operating year. C. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will collaborate with Marine Atlantic to achieve a more thorough security system at both ferry crossings that balances the comfort of passengers as well as safety for all. So, subclauses. This may include searches of various compartments within or throughout the exterior of transport trucks, vehicles, campers, trailers, ATVs, etc. The system may include requesting random passengers to open luggage, bags, or other storage systems inside or outside of transport trucks, vehicles, campers, trailers, ATVs, etc. And the system may include the purchase of portable or handheld X-ray machines to conduct searches of compartments, luggage, or passengers. Should this be a pertinent means, a budget and implementation plan will be devised upon necessity. 3, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will expand its, I'm running out of time. Will expand its speed camera program across the province. This expansion will see cameras installed along stretches of the Trans-Canada Highway, as well as in more rural areas where there are long, straight stretches of road or identified high-risk sections of road. B, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will expand its speed camera to install an additional 60 to 70 speed cameras across Newfoundland and Labrador, not including the minimum 10 cameras that have been installed and operated by Genoptic Smart Mobility Solutions. C, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will begin to set aside $2.5 million to expand the installation, operation, and maintenance over time of provincial-wide speed cameras in addition to the current pilot program with Genoptic. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador, will adjust this budget should there be a reason for it. 4, I find this clause especially to be very important. Each clause within this resolution will take special care into account for various demographics. A, the administration of this bill will consider certain demographics at higher risk of increased security or danger, whether it be training for opioid overdoses, providing adequate naloxone kits across the province, security searches, or other situations which may arise from this resolution. B, the administration of this bill must not discriminate or use stereotypes against certain demographics, whether it be training for opioid overdoses, providing adequate naloxone kits across the province, security searches, or other situations which may arise from this resolution. C, for each clause within this resolution, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will listen to comments and concerns from various demographics before implementing anything, and should any changes be necessary after the fact, if any demographic is being affected unfairly or by any part of the resolution, changes will be made promptly and appropriately. Citizens will be offered a mailing address and an online portal to send any comments and concerns within 6 weeks of the start of the date of this resolution. I see that I've gone over my time, but I feel that this resolution is very important that we consider, that we pass today. I look forward to the debate. I encourage many amendments and discussion on this. I yield my time. Thank you.
I'd like to congratulate the Minister of Justice and Public Safety on presenting their first resolution in the Newfoundland and Labrador Youth Parliament. Let's give them some money. We will now move into a 10-minute clarification period. Members have the opportunity to ask the Minister questions regarding the contents of the resolution, but purely to clarify the meaning of something found within. Once all questions are done, I will invite the critic to deliver their remarks. Does anybody have any questions for the Minister? The critic of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One of the first statements that the Minister made was only 80% of the province will have access to naloxone kits. My question to the Minister is, why not 100%? Why not 100% have access?
Here.
This is clarification period, so it can't be debatable. It is just purely to clarify something within the resolution. The critic of Justice and Public Safety.
I will rephrase that. Where did the Minister find the number 80%? Why not 100%?
Thank you. The Minister for Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That is a great question. The reason that it is 80%, as I have mentioned, was based off the 2011 Census of Municipalities that was conducted by Municipalities NL, and the population of Newfoundland at the time. It would create about 80% of people that would have essentially immediate access within their community, or their municipality rather, to naloxone kits. I would like to see it higher. That would be something that I guess we could further discuss and amend. But as of right now, to get it to all municipalities, it would bring it to about 80% of people that would have immediate access, if that answers the critic's question.
The member for Virginia Waters Pleasantville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is about Clause 2. Is there a particular reason that the increased security is focused on the ferries and not other methods into the province. Thank you.
The Minister of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for his question. The reason that we're focusing on ferries with Marine Atlantic is because there are so many crossings that happen. There's so many passengers and people that come in and out of this province through the ferries all year round, and this is it's important that we ensure that there is proper security and safety for citizens of the province and to the passengers that are coming and going from the province. Thank you.
The Critic for Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to ask the Minister, why did the Minister only focus on 2 of the ferries when there's 3 in our province? Is there like specific reasoning towards these 2 ferries opposed to the other one?
The Minister of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for their question. That is a great question. The reason that we're focused with Marine Atlantic and their Channel Port of Basque Argentia ferries is, Marine Atlantic is a Crown corporation, and the government can work more directly, in a sense, with them. I am aware of the Labrador ferry with Labrador Marine, but I am not as familiar with their practices and procedures as I am with Marine Atlantic, if that answers the question.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So my question's regarding Clause 1. So you mentioned that we are distributing naloxone kits. I'm just wondering, like, which type of naloxone kit are we distributing? Are we going with the intranasal ones, or are we going with the IM injectable ones? Because both of them have very different training, different costs, that type of thing. So I was just wondering if we've looked at the cost for each of those type thing and which one we're deciding to go with.
The Minister of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've looked at the costs, and I think it would be important to have both kinds of kits and all kinds of training available, offered, implemented to as many people as possible, as it greatly increases our education around opioid overdoses and naloxone, as well as increases, the chance for people to be saved should they need it. I think that could be something that we could work towards amending to just include the specific types of kits and training that would be offered across the province. That would be something that I would be open to definitely working with the Leader of the Opposition to including, if that answers the question.
The member for Cape St. Francis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question for the Minister is regarding the 4th clause, specifically subclause C. If I understand it correctly, the online portal and the mailing address only is active until the policies are implemented, concerns from various demographics before implementing anything. The following statement: should any changes be necessary after the fact, changes will be made promptly and appropriately. Is the same protocol going to be through a mailing address and online portal, the same protocol afterwards, after the changes have been implemented, or will there be a separate way of contacting the government which will be addressed after the changes have been implemented? Thank you.
The Minister of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for his question. That is a great question. I hadn't considered so much the changeover, I guess, so in a sense. But the mailing address and online portal that would be implemented before measures of the bill get passed, I feel that could be kept open afterwards, should there be those concerns that people want to address or comments that they may have. That could also be something that is amended to include the specifics of that instruction. Thank you.
The member for St. John's West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question pertains to Clause 2A. The Minister mentioned in the resolution the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will set a preliminary budget of $2.5 million for additional full-time workers. I'm curious to know where this $2.5 million, like how this number came about.
The Minister of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So this budget came from researching the average salaries of workers with Marine Atlantic, and to just set something as a baseline that can be changed, can be increased or decreased should we see the need, should Marine Atlantic indicate the need. But this was just off of just looking at the average salaries of their workers currently.
The Critic of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister, as I am confused on what the criteria for the random selections mentioned in Clause 2 would be at the Marine Atlantic Ferry. How would these people be chosen for these random selections, and what is the criteria for someone to be chosen?
The Minister of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That, again, would be something to work with Marine Atlantic with, as they work with their passengers more than we work with their passengers. And where they do already conduct some security searches, it would be something that we would work with them to achieve a balance of the best method for implementing searches on passengers. At this moment, I don't know what that would look like. That would, again, be something to discuss with them, or should there be any amendments that the critic would like to bring up for that afterwards, I would be open to that as well.
The member for Harbor Grace Portagrave, you have a minute.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm curious what's total budget of this resolution, and also kits are helpful, but they get expire. So town need a way to refill their supplies. How much money it will cost, and what refill system will use government? Thank you.
The Minister of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thought, yeah, so in Clause 1C, it's mentioned that we will start by budgeting $2 million. Similarly with other budgets in the bill, that can change should it be necessary. Also, as mentioned in Clause 4, should there be changes necessary, should people be affected unfairly, such as if there is an area where kits are expiring and they need new ones, we would make sure that everyone has equal access and equal opportunity. This is a starting budget. If it needs to be changed to increase to allow for bringing in new kits to get rid of expired kits, that would be something that we would make sure that is seen, that we change the budget to accommodate for that. That answers your question.
Thank you for all your questions. Thank you, Minister. I now invite the Critic of Justice and Public Safety to deliver their remarks. You will have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before I begin, I would like to commend and congratulate the Minister across the floor on a thought-out and well-articulated resolution. I think it is evident, Ms. Speaker, that the Minister is passionate about this topic, and it is seen through her right. However, Ms. Speaker, there are various aspects of this resolution that are looked at from a downstream approach. So therefore, Ms. Speaker, I am going to go through this bill clause by clause through my perspective as an upstream approach. Starting with Clause 1, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will offer opioid dose training as well as naloxone kits to more areas across the province. The word offered here, why is it not mandated? Why is it offered? As a nursing student, I have to renew my BLS and CPR every single year. Yet, why are we only offering this if it could save lives, just as my CPR does? I think this clause in particular is focusing on a complete downstream approach because, for example, Why are we not focusing on the bigger issue? Why do we have to use naloxone kits in the first place? Because of the drug crisis in Newfoundland and Labrador. Another concern that I have that's focusing on a downstream approach is those who work directly with the public, example nurses, doctors, and teachers. How far does et cetera in this extend? Because working with the public can include fast food workers, retail workers. Are we training the whole island? Is that our plan? Those should not be allowed to obtain a job in their specified field without this training, which includes first responders, which was not mentioned in the teachers, nurses, and doctors. It is very unclear in this clause if it is optional or mandatory. And if it is required, what would happen on refusal? Secondly, all municipalities will be offered training and a supply of naloxone kits. It will be encouraged for 3 town council members. Why town council members? Why not the fire departments in the municipal government? It's very concerning. And will this tax be imposed on people to fund this all? Because we are paying so much in tax dollars as it is now, let alone if we drive up the prices to pay for naloxone kits that we do not really have a pricing range for yet. There's a lot of numbers thrown in this resolution. I'm curious to know where these numbers come from, as the naloxone kits have not been priced. And are we going to transport people and pay their salaries for missing their work? Why so much money on the naloxone kits? Why not focus on what's causing this bigger issue and why the drugs are here in the first place? The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will devise an online telephone application process. Why not an online registration? Why are we applying to get the training for something that's saving people's lives? Personally, I think a registration is needed rather than the application. And what if the numbers are low in a specific area? What if we only have one person in the municipality sign up for this training? Are we going to pay for all the training for just that one singular person? Or are we going to end up putting them somewhere else, transporting them to a different location? The plan here with these naloxone kits is very unclear to me, and I don't really understand where it's going. Who would be doing the training for these kits was also not mentioned in this resolution. Are we taking more time away from other people? Are we paying people to do the training? It just seems like a lot of money focused on a downstream approach, yet again. Secondly, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will partner with Marine Atlantic to increase security measures to reduce incoming and outgoing illicit substances. My first question of this is, there was no talk of the ferry and going to Labrador. Once again, our people from Labrador are forgotten and not taken into account from our government. Who will do the training of these dogs at the ferries? And where will this be conducted to? Because clearly our Marine Atlantic parking lot, I don't think is good enough to conduct searches in vehicles, mind you, at a random selection. Speaking of the random selection, Madam Speaker, this violates the Charter Rights of Freedoms, Section 8. Section 8, in which protects everyone from unreasonable searches and seizures, ensuring that privacy is respected. So my question is, random searches with dogs? Where's the privacy in that? In the middle of the parking lot? Personally, Madam Speaker, I do not think that this was fully thought out, as our privacy is being invaded and the people of Labrador are forgotten. Who will conduct these random requests? Will it be an AI machine that does it? Will it be a computer system? And without these handheld X-ray machines, how will it be done? Because it was only mentioned that they may be brought in. It wasn't for sure. And for all of this to work overall, we're going to have to train people to go to the Marine Atlantic because typically the workers there, they aren't security staff, so we need to hire more onto that and train them properly if we're going to be using X-ray kits and random requests and digging through people's vehicles. Clause 3, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will expand its speed cameras across the province. Okay, this is a good clause. I agree. The speeding in Newfoundland and Labrador is a little bit absurd. However, what if it's a 17-year-old driving his mom's car? Who will get the fine of the ticket? The mom or the 17-year-old? And why was this number 60 to 70 speeding cameras across Newfoundland? And why was this brand used? More technology replacing jobs of the people within our province. As a government, you guys should try to be, or they should try to keep the people within our province, not replace them.
Here.
Putting money into technology yet again causes people to move away from Newfoundland and Labrador. We're losing people on the daily as it is, Madam Speaker. It's a shame. This bill also mentions the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will adjust its budget should there be a reason for it. What would the reason be to adjust the budget? And Madam Speaker, the budget of this bill in total is $9.5 million. $9.5 million is a lot for a downstream approach. If you take it from an upstream approach, all of this would be taken into consideration, how the drugs are getting in here, why they are still here, and focusing on more prevention from people doing these drugs in the first place, not waiting until the last response and saving someone who has already overdosed. Clause 4. I personally think Clause 4 should be redundant. Our government needs to be doing this anyway. I think that it should be a given that our government is not being biased or anything. I think all demographics should look at anyway. So I don't understand why our government needs to specifically mention this clause because personally, I don't understand why it's not a given. We're throwing a lot of money at the problem, but there's no clear plan on how this is going to carry out or how it will make a significant difference. Like my LO mentioned, the critic doesn't even know the cost really or what type of naloxone kits. The minister doesn't know what type of naloxone kits we're going with yet. The plan is still unclear. And $500,000 was only allocated for the naloxone kits, yet $2.5 million for the ferry. Where are our priorities as a government? Our funding should be directly towards the impacts of public health for our people directly. I think this bill can be passed. However, I think an upstream approach needs to be taken into account before it does. More budget adjusting is needed, and more discussion on using more terms as in it will be offered and it should be done, not just may. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable the Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise before this honorable House today, of course, in strong support of the Minister's resolution, but not only to support the Minister's resolution.
Excuse me, Premier, we haven't voted on opening debate on the resolution yet. I ask you to take a seat while we do that. Okay, we will now vote on opening debate on a resolution of justice and public safety. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Okay, fantastic. Debate is now open on a resolution presented by the Minister of Justice and Public Safety. Mr. Premier.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker. A bit unclear. I thought we had already opened debate. My apologies. So, like I said, I rise in this honorable House today not only to stand in strong support with my minister, who's clearly taking the attempts to fill in the obvious gaps in our public safety administration, but also to call out what I believe is an act of poor faith opposition. I don't believe the critic is interested in fixing this resolution. I don't believe the critic is interested in actually paying attention to the key elements of this resolution that are going to help Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. I think many of the points that the critic brought up were brought up rashly and without listening to the questions that the critic himself had asked the minister. The everyday dangers that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians face come from things like increases in crime, increases in drug prevalence, and come from, unfortunately, increases of irresponsibility on our roads. We need to be able to act responsibly, but act nonetheless. We can sit here and talk and argue, but something needs to happen now. We will not lose another Newfoundlander and Labradorian to these numerous gaps that we will fill with this resolution. One of the critiques was that the St. Barb ferry wasn't mentioned. And I think it's a good point if the resolution was purely to talk about transportation or access. But our resolution is not to do that. Our resolution is to make Newfoundland and Labrador safer. Geographically, it is only obvious that the North Sydney ferry is closer to the southern border with a known propensity for increases in drugs and weapons. If we are to prevent things getting in through the Labrador ferry, sorry friends, geographically, that's a Quebec problem. And I don't think we're in the business of arming that border anytime soon. The minister strongly critiqued, or the critic, sorry, strongly critiqued the number of financial statements that were presented in this resolution, and I think that was another poor faith attempt to poke holes in this bill. The minister clearly based every single factor, every single statistic in this bill on labor standards, on protecting jobs, and making sure that the people who are defending our front lines are paid well and secure. The claim that this resolution violates the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is absurd. As I said, I'm not sure the critic has been to the airport where random selections are conducted daily. I've been a part of many, and I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it as an interested citizen in protecting the safety of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. To abandon this logic for the ferry system would be so backwards. And I think it's time that we step up our game in making sure that our ferries are protected. I think the question was, how are we selecting random passengers? I'll let that one sit for a minute. They are randomly selected, folks. This is how they do it, this is how it's been done, and this is how we will continue to make sure that not only is our security effective, but it is equitable, and that nobody is targeted, as mentioned in Clause 4 that the critic has such an issue with. Now, the critic is absolutely correct in saying that every government, every single government, not only should be more responsible and accountable to the broad diversity of its populace, but also should be taking measures every single day to increase that knowledge and increase that understanding. And Clause 4 of this resolution does exactly that. When do we ever see additional clauses on resolutions built to cater towards certain communities broadly? When do we see this kind of creative policymaking that's meant to change the way that we look at how we set rules, how we work with our people? The minister has done an excellent job of setting a standard that I think everybody in this honourable House can learn from, Madam Speaker. Folks, the speed on the roads, in my opinion, is my biggest fear. in the province, and I know that I'm not alone in that. Speed cameras, as the Honourable Minister mentioned this morning in the speech from the throne, are effective, have continued to be effective, and the critiques of the speed camera policy are nothing but pandering, nothing but platitudes meant to give the citizens less trust in their government, to make them believe that we're not working for them, because we know you want the seat. Folks, the question of who gets the fine if a 17-year-old is driving their mother's car, how fines are administered in people's homes is their own business. That is their own personal responsibility. That 17-year-old is legally a child, and it is totally within the mother's consent to allow them to drive. If the mother gets the fine, it is not up to any government in this province how that gets handled within their own home. That is not our problem by any stretch. I think one of the most concerning parts of all of this, really, is that it seems the critic would rather have more police on the roads than more cameras. The critic argued for taking away jobs. What jobs are being lost by speed cameras? Having less cops on the road to catch speeders? I'm not necessarily sure that's effective. When our police force would greatly benefit from speed cameras to take off a part of their workload so they can focus on the everyday things that the critic is probably not as accustomed to as the rest of you Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. The everyday dangers in our province can be fixed and need to be fixed creatively. Speed cameras are an effective way to do that, and to continue to push against it is to continue to push against the safety and well-being of the people of this province. Folks, I strongly encourage you to back this resolution with everything you have, because the longer we go without acting, without making changes right now to stop the imports of drugs and firearms, to stop the reckless speeding, if we don't take the measures to address that right now, when will we? Because I don't think it'll be under an opposition government.
The member for Labrador West, you have 10 minutes.
So I want to go through this bit by bit. I apologize, I'm losing my voice, guys. It's been a long week. 1A says that every public servant will have this training. I want to hone in on teachers because I'm going to be a teacher. I know a lot of teachers. And teachers don't need any more pressure. They don't need anything else to take care of. They take care of the children of this province on a daily basis. Right? Why can't the government spend money to have a nurse or a youth outreach worker in every school across the province that has this training and has the ability to do it? And then maybe if there's an extra teacher that has it, it's an extra set of hands in an emergency. You know, earlier it was mentioned, are we training the whole island? And I mean, I still feel like you're going to train the whole island before the new teacher in Nain gets this training. My next question was for B. Who's paying for this? MNL is a membership-funded organization, so they can't really do it. Municipalities pay the fees to be a part of municipalities, Newfoundland and Labrador. And I mean, if those fees have to go up, your taxes have to go up. That's how money makes the world go round, right? And I mean, it says that the government is going to pay for the transportation and for the travel for this, you know, training. But are they paying for somebody to come from St. John's to Labrador West to do this training? Because that's $2,000 gone there, let alone what they have to pay for the salary-wise, and then the promises to pay whoever's missing work for this training. It's adding up. Number 2, and oh, this is good, guys. This is good. What about the illicit substances that are coming out of Labrador? You know, the Premier himself mentioned that this is Quebec's problem. You know, Labrador Marine travels from St. Barbara Blanc Blanc every day, and drugs come from Labrador, Quebec, anywhere in mainland. There's a road there. You guys are on an island, right? You know, I'll connect that to number 4. You're leaving out a demographic. You say that you're not going to do it, but you are. And the government continues to do this. You know, that's leaving everybody north of St. Anthony in danger, right? If you continue to neglect the people of Labrador and continue to neglect the drugs that are coming into the entire province and not just the island portion of it, I think it's fair to say that we're going to pack up our minds and all our money and go where they're going to take care of us, right? The speed cameras, where are they going? You know, like where? But are they going on the side of the road on Prince Philip Drive, or are they going on Bartlett in Lab City? I can't think of. I thought, you know, okay, maybe if we up the number by 10, then every district gets 2. Where am I going to put 2 speed cameras in Lab City? One on Bartlett and one on Hudson? Like, where are you putting them? And then I thought, well, like, a small community like Meadows doesn't need 2 speed cameras either. But there's already some for St. John's, and if we don't delegate them evenly, St. John's will get all of them. There's so many issues within this, and I think the 4th clause is almost hypocritical.
The member for Bonavista.
So, of course, I would like to preface by saying congratulations. This is a really great bill, well thought out, and I'm very proud. I agree with a lot of your points, especially with the security at the Marine Atlantic. It seems to be lacking, so I very much applaud you for pointing that out and wanting to take initiative to change it. It is true that we do get most of our firearms and illegal substances through Marine Atlantic, through those 2 ferries. But there is a couple of concerns I have, of course. There is nothing in this bill that I found that directly addresses the most recent shelter in places that we've been seeing in St. John's, like the active threats. What is the government going to do during these active present threats? Like, if there is an active shooter, there is no policy in the bill stating what the government is going to do, what the government is going to, like, get the police to do. There's just, that part is missing, and I just wanted to see that. I also do have to share a lot of sentiments with the Premier that, like, the word random is quite self-explanatory, and these searches are conducted in the St. John's Airport almost every day. I also do see it as some sort of a job opportunity rather than the job loss, because trainers do exist on the island already. Many trainers exist, actually. So with the trainers that already exist, they can already go out and provide this training, right? They are already being paid to do this. It's not being taken away. Like, this is stuff that's already happening. We're not paying any extra for it. That is how I see it. And Clause 4, unfortunately, it should be the way. There should be no bias. There should be no prejudice in the government. That is the way it should be, but unfortunately, it just is not. Like, it's not. It's sad, but it's not. The government and everyone, there's bias and prejudice every day. We see it every day in bills, and I do feel that Clause 4 is super important to include because it's common sense, but it's not.
The member for St. George's Humber.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would just like to say that this bill is going really great and the discussion around it is very productive. I just find some of the arguments of the critics to be rather hypocritical at certain points, because while they are talking about the problem of drugs getting into Newfoundland and Labrador, when presented with a solution of a simple thing that happens also at airports, it silently violates charters. And then they talk about how naloxone training should be given to everyone, not offered, and as if that doesn't violate someone's right to choose whether or not they receive training or not. And coming from a personal standpoint, one thing I do kind of agree with the whole training the whole island situation. I believe when we get to amendments, I will definitely mention this, but the distinction between everyone on the island and people that work with at-risk individuals and at-risk youth, because I work with at-risk youth daily, and it is essentially important for us to be trained. And with our naloxone training, the training isn't necessarily just to be able to do everything on the spot. It's more so that when you attempt to do something, when you attempt to give someone a critical few minutes from an overdose, they cannot go around and sue you, because it is about protecting your rights. If you have training, yes, you're not the most qualified person. You're not like a doctor that can actually help, but you are allowed to save someone even for a few minutes, for the doctors to get there faster, for the ambulance to get there faster. And I just find that some of the things that the critics are putting forward is very critical and very, very opposite of what they try and say sometimes. Thank you.
I'd like to congratulate the member from St. George's Humber on their very first speech in the House. The member for Cape St. Francis.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I would like to say, first of all, that I am generally in sympathy with the scope and the aim of the resolution. My criticisms, if we want to call them that, or at the very least concerns, are largely around the financing and the economic matters pertaining to the discussion, the methods of financing, as well as the proportionate necessity for spending high amounts of money when very few statistics were given aside from the first clause. I believe we had mentioned the 76 overdoses in 2024, which is indeed quite concerning. But once we hit the discussion on, I believe it was firearms, and then especially into driving, there were very few statistics given at all. And before we are going to spend such vast sums of money, we must see numbers, as well as sources backing up the numbers which are given by the government. Regarding Marine Atlantic, there are important questions to ask before we jump into very extensive and expensive security measures. First of all, do we know that there is a significant traffic of drugs and firearms on Marine Atlantic? It could be very possible that it is, although I don't see any actual evidence in the resolution aside from us having to take the government at their word. The exhaustive security measures will certainly cause significant inconvenience for travelers and workers alike. And the simple question is that, is it worth it? We don't know what the supply is. The purpose of security at the airport is generally different than on Marine Atlantic. It is often for the security of the passengers at an airport. At Marine Atlantic, we haven't had any security problems for the passengers. This is purely about the supply of illegal drugs and firearms. So that must be taken into consideration. The Premier's comments about random searches simply being random is deceptively convincing at face value, but it is not random, because in order for a search to be random, it must be generated by something which does not make its own decisions. And a security guard choosing someone for a random search is not a random task at all. It is indeed a selection of an individual. So that requires a significant amount of discussion for protocol, rather than just allowing security guards to make their own random decisions. And he mentioned that we must gain the trust of the citizens by providing security, and I agree with that. But in order to gain the trust, we must be transparent. We must explain how we are going to achieve these measures financially and from a security point of view, explain our purposes, explain our reasoning, and we must support them with facts, evidence, and sources. We must raise revenue for the bill, for the resolution. There's nothing in here which mentions how we're going to pay for this. Perhaps there could be an amendment at some point about graduated fines for speeding based on income, something to that effect. I don't have many ideas right now, but it must be discussed. And until we couple economics with the realities that we're facing, we're simply going to be discussing what a utopian ideal could be, rather than something practical and achievable. And with that, I yield my time.
I would like to congratulate the member from Cape St. Francis on their very first speech in the House of Assembly. The member for Virginia Waters Pleasantville, but before that, I would like to remind you that at any time you can bring an amendment forward. You can flag down our page, and we will start that process. So at any time, please make it known that if you would like to make an amendment. Thank you. And the member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I'm just going to go through a few points that I thought of while listening to my fellow members' speeches and also reading the resolution. For the first one, I'm not terribly educated on drug overdose treatment, things like that. So I'll leave most of the criticism of that point to the more educated members on the bench in front of me. But I will say that I am concerned with the, as the critic said, the downstream approach to dealing with these sorts of things. I think it's concerning that the bill makes no mention of trying to reduce the amount of people who turn to drugs as a way of coping. There's no addressing in this resolution the mental health crisis. The bill ignores the mental health and socioeconomic issues that underlie drug abuse in the first place. And I would like to see a bit more of that in there. Moving on to the second point, I think initially I was more opposed to this than I am now. Maybe I've come around a little bit on a lot of it. Comparing it to searches at airports certainly was a big point of that. I think we should be consistent, whatever our policy on security. But I do think that search dogs and whatnot seems a little bit excessive. I think that there is a point at which it becomes a little bit too invasive, right? Now, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say it violates the charter, but I think that, things like that, not to mention quite expensive, as has been mentioned a couple times. The speed cameras, generally, I think that's a pretty good idea. I've heard that that's effective, and it will, as the Premier, said, it'll take some pressure off of our police force so that they can deal with things that a human can do instead of just a camera. And I'll finally move on to Clause 4, which, although it seems well-intentioned, I think is, in its current form, pretty unenforceable. The resolution outlines no mechanism whatsoever for ensuring that the words that are said here about remaining neutral and not being biased in any particular way are actually carried out. There's no implementation plan. So I would like to see a little bit more detail, and that kind of goes for a lot of things in this resolution. But overall, I think it has some ups and some downs, and if we work on it a little bit, it can be passed. So that's all. Thank you.
The member for Lake Melville.
I would first like to say that I do appreciate this bill, and I do agree with a lot of it. Back home, I do a lot of work with the public, with at-risk youth and at-risk adults. This is something that I speak about almost every day. But one of the biggest points that was going through my head while seeing this resolution was there was no mentions of testing strips available. It was only naloxone. Testing strips, if you don't know, can test for levels of fentanyl, which is very lethal, especially if you don't know that it is in your drugs that you are taking. So there was no mention of that, and that should be something that is considered because it can be preventative. Because when we are giving out these testing strips, if it is something that we can do, there is also a number for Canadians to not use alone. So they will use a test strip. If there's fentanyl they still want to use, they can call this number and make sure that they don't overdose. It should also be pointed out that naloxone cannot reverse every single overdose, and it's not effective for all opiates. It's just not effective for anybody and everybody. And to kind of roll back to a mental health point, when we are looking at addiction, mental health and addictions, we can look to Northern Labrador for where the government has failed in the realm of mental health and addictions and prolonging that treatment. So there is a mental health unit available in the hospital in Goose Bay when residents are typically from the North Coast or the South Coast of Labrador. And because of some gaps, some oversight, when those residents go back to their homes up the North Coast or the South Coast, there's no follow-up care. Pharmacies take weeks on end to deliver medication that is essential for continuing mental health care. There are no injection sites that can be used, and there are minimal nurses who can provide those services to people that desperately need them. We should not be forcing Labradorians to live in Newfoundland or in Goose Bay to receive the mental health care that they so deserve.
Hear, hear.
The critic of transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I, as the critic of transportation infrastructure, want to ask the Honourable Minister how she actually plans to pay for these speed cameras. She mentions in her resolution What happens, Madam Speaker, when people spray paint over these cameras and vandalize them? Will the government replace all 70 cameras? Where is the number 70 coming from? How much in taxpayer money would the government be wasting on these useless cameras? Also, Madam Speaker, sorry, Madam Speaker, but to echo the concerns of the member from Lab West, if the government truly believes that drug traffickers won't start to funnel their practices through our Labrador ferry, then they would be truly mistaken. How will the government explain to Labradorians that he plans to put the safety of our Labrador ferry at jeopardy by allowing drug traffickers to go free rein on our only ferry crossing that connects to Labrador? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You may only rise once, sorry. The member for St. John's Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As someone who has worked in the service industry of Newfoundland and Labrador, and someone who has seen how important the seconds might become in case of an overdose, I am in support with the resolution, but not without some criticism. Clause 1A, only opioid overdose training is being offered to the public. As someone with allergies and having loved ones who have severe allergies, I understand how important each second becomes during a severe food allergy or any kind of reaction that might lead to anaphylaxis. From my personal experience, this might take minutes or this might take hours. And if this is someone's first time experiencing this, they might not even realize that they need an EpiPen until it is too late, often because they don't know the proper signs. So I would recommend, instead of funding for training specifically for opioid overdose, which might be more specifically useful for some towns or some areas, we fund first aid training that includes a variety of immediate response training, including opioid overdose, or how to use a naloxone kit, which will be useful for all over Newfoundland and Labrador. My second critique is that it only includes the public. I recommend this includes students too, including students from MUN and CNA. And additionally, it should be specified who will fall under the public category. Clause 2A. Emergency wait times around the province are an excruciating amount of hours. This does not even count non-priority injuries. This happens due to an overflow of patients along with staffing shortages. Not to mention, for non-emergency causes, all the walk-in clinics are not even open in the weekends. A close friend of mine had to go out of the country to get an emergency surgery faster because they had to wait an extra 8 months in Newfoundland and Labrador to get the same surgery. When I was a student, I had to take a cab to take a friend to the emergency room because we could not afford an ambulance. With all this stated, I cannot support spending millions, 9.5 millions in total to be exact, allegedly, going into security while our healthcare organizations are still not properly funded. Clause 2C. As a person of color who always got randomly selected in searches in multiple airports all across the globe, no matter what the reason for my travel was, whether it was visiting, studying, being a diplomat, or otherwise, including twice in a row in the same search in the St. John's Airport for a domestic flight, I agree with the critique for justice and public safety that more clarification might be needed as random selections may become a subconscious discriminatory tactic very quick. Therefore, transparency for these potential random searches, especially transparency and accountability from the individuals conducting these searches, must be required. Thank you.
I would like to congratulate the member on their first speech. Let's give them a round of applause. The member for Waterford Valley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I'm noticing a lot of very fair criticisms about what this bill does not already include, and I think that these are very important conversations that should be had. But I think that within the scope of this bill, the minister has brought up a lot of very viable options to address the problems talked about in this bill through tried and trusted methods. And one of these that I would like to focus on, especially given some of my own personal experience, is the hot topic of security at the Marine Atlantic ferry terminals. Now, I'm not going to get up before you today and pretend I know how the Labrador ferry works, but I have taken the Marine Atlantic ferry twice within the past 12 months at both the Port aux Basques ferry and the Argenta terminal, and I also work in the food service industry at multiple restaurants that are only a 10-minute drive away from the Argenta ferry terminal. My town is a very touristy spot during the summer months, and I have a lot of very valuable perspective just interacting in restaurants with people who do take these services. And I would imagine, and please, I apologize if I am wrong, that you cannot fairly compare the Labrador ferry to the Marine Atlantic ferry. I would imagine that one is probably used as more of a commuter service between mainland Newfoundland and the island Newfoundland, and one is very tourism focused, connecting Newfoundland with the rest of the country and mainland Canada especially. I would also like to mention that Labrador is a very far drive away from many urban centers in Canada, whereas the North Sydney Ferry Terminal is within a day's drive from Maine, the US border, and many other urban centers within Canada and in the US. So one is going to bring a lot more people from all around North America and arguably the world working in restaurants. I've served people who have gotten off the ferry. They've driven from British Columbia. They've driven from all over the place in the States. And I would imagine that the shorter Labrador ferry serves as more of a commuter. And this is not to say that I think we should be totally neglecting security measures implemented at the Labrador Ferry Terminal, but I think that implementing the security measures at the Marine Atlantic terminals is a wonderful starting point, and I am fully in support of that. I would like to reiterate what the Premier echoed about random being the criteria here. Even if you didn't want to take a random approach to how you're selecting who's getting randomly searched at the crossings, there are different approaches you can take. If a random approach ends up not working, you can take a stochastic process with a weighted aspect. You could even notify people who say, hey, I'm driving a big RV. Hey, I'm driving a big car. Or you could just randomly notify people when they are paying for their ticket. You will be randomly searched your vehicle. And yeah, there's different ways to approach and make people aware of this. And people are going to be aware and consenting to these random searches in terms and agreements when they are agreeing to take the ferry crossing. Everything would be included in terms and agreements. This wouldn't be a surprise to anyone. And yes, it is very similar to the security searches we see in airports. My member across the way did bring up a great point that security in airports and on ferry terminals have very different uses and purposes, I'll say. Security in airports is largely for passenger security in the airport and on voyage on the airplane, while security at a ferry terminal is more so focusing on firearms and drug smuggling. And as someone in the aviation industry, this actually made me think, and I think you could take a really kind of unique approach to this and approach it from the purpose of why can't security at the ferry terminals also be for this passenger safety at the terminal and while on voyage on the boat? In aviation, a lot of the safety measurements that are put into place only happen after an accident happens and it is too late to save the people who may have been hurt or killed in an accident. So many times you don't know that you need a security measure until something has already happened showing you that. So I think that this bill could be a great way to add an extra security blanket for people who are taking the ferry terminal, whether it be, the people who drive cargo trucks delivering important goods across the island to mainland Canada, tourists, you name it. I think that this bill is just a really great way, this clause especially, is a really great way to prevent accidents and incidents from occurring on sea, which I think is so important, as the Marine Atlantic ferry service is so important to the people of Newfoundland and our workers and the people who want to come enjoy the island. And just to touch briefly on Clause 4, you could argue that it is wishy-washy and is kind of unnecessary, but I do really like that this offers citizens the direct opportunity to bring up any concerns and comments they have with the bill from a more personal perspective, as I think is such a great aspect of Youth Parliament. We're all able to come in here and bring our own personal perspectives here. And I think that Clause 4 is just a really great addition to inviting people with different personal perspectives to have their voices heard so we can make adjustments to the bill as necessary. But I think this bill is a really great starting point to fix a lot of problems that we have on the island, and I'm in full support, and I would hope to see some amendments made to some of the parts that people do have very fair criticisms on. Thank you.
The Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So first of all, I would like to congratulate the Minister across the way of presenting this bill today. It is her first bill, and she did a beautiful job, Madam Speaker. I'd also like to congratulate my critic on presenting her critiques of this bill. She also did a beautiful job. So I rise today in opposition of this bill, of course. So while I fully support wider access to naloxone kit training, we need to be more upstream, as my critic mentioned. So what I mean by that, looking at naloxone kit usage and usage of kits after opioid overdose, we're looking at the problem after it's already happened. We aren't looking at the things that cause the problem, which is usage of these drugs. So by solely focusing on these kits, we need to look at the roots of these addictions. We need to look at the trauma of the Newfoundlanders and Labradorians of this province. We need to look at mental health issues that exist in this province, which, as the member over this way mentioned, we already have such a lack of supports for. We need to look at the lack of education around drugs in this province, which, honestly, I can say is unfortunately a big gap. So as a government, I'm surprised that we want to face this issue after it's already happened and people are already dying and dead. So we need to focus more on preventing these overdoses before they happen. Also, from a healthcare perspective, more overdoses. When you overdose on drugs, you're taken to the emergency room. These are wait times that are now extended even more that could be prevented if we just had the education so these people didn't have to do these drugs, overdose on them, and then end up in our emergency rooms. These are very unfortunate issues. If we had the proper mental health support, the proper knowledge of trauma and things that happen in this province to create these drug addictions, we could potentially stop that, as well as helping our healthcare system and easing up on their burden. So for Clause 2, echoing the member for Lab West, Clause 2 completely ignores the people of Labrador. So some basic geography, friends. So Labrador is connected to the mainland. So it's like our Premier said, he mentioned it was a Quebec problem. Quebec is connected to the rest of Canada. So to imply that Marine Atlantic is the only important source of illegal and illicit substances and items is grossly naive of our government.
Unfortunately, Canada does have its own drug and illegal item markets, and we would be remiss to ignore this darker side of our country. Illicit drugs kill people no matter where they come from, Madam Speaker, whether they come from the southern border, whether they come from our own country. They kill people no matter what. And our government needs to address this immediately before more people pass away, not after they've already overdosed. So what I believe my critic was getting at with her mention of the potential violation of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms was that our minister did not state that these searches would be how they would be chosen, how these people would be chosen. I know the whole debate on randomly, but is it truly random through an electronic or AI system? Or are we employing people to randomly select these people? If it is the latter, though this was not clarified, perhaps it is the electronic system. However, if it is the latter, where we're employing people to say, oh, this person, this person, this person are getting searched, we can't promise that there's no bias by these people in choosing who they choose to search, Madam Speaker. The selection, like if it's done by humans rather than a machine like at the airport, which our Premier loves to mention, if it's done by people, we can't confirm that there would be no bias and that they'd be fairly chosen. So I think with an amendment, this section could possibly work if it is amended to clarify that. So clause 3, I do like this clause. As both a nurse and a first responder, I do believe that speeding kills and that we should do everything within our control to prevent it. I'd definitely like to see some amendments brought forward to specify like where exactly these cameras would be. Like the member from Labrador West mentioned, like are you putting them all around town or are we putting them like equally across the province? What are we kind of doing here? As well as how we plan to evaluate the effectiveness of the cameras in our province specifically, Madam Speaker. Like, are we gonna do a study based on a certain time frame? Like, how are we kind of going about this type of thing? Because I mean, as a resident of this province, I'd like to see the outcome of what my tax dollars are being spent on. So clause 4, honestly, it feels like common sense, Madam Speaker. However, I agree with the member behind me from Bonavista that it is not always common sense. However, our government, Madam Speaker, should not need a separate clause to ensure the safety of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and that they are protected from stereotypes and discrimination. This should be a given of our government bench. They should be aware enough of the legislature that they are putting forward and the people that they serve to combat any discrimination or stereotyping before it even gets into this honorable house. I kind of do agree with my critic that it is a tad redundant. I can see where they were going and I can see the reasoning behind it. However, I feel like it should be a given and that we should be able to trust our government bench enough to deal with this and that we don't have to put in additional clause. Because if we do it for this, we have to do it for every single bill we put forward, and then it is truly redundant, Madam Speaker. So all in all, I commend our Honourable Minister for bringing forward this bill. I think that she made an excellent effort in combating some of the issues within this province. I'm hopeful that we are able to amend this bill into something that we can all feel comfortable with and eventually pass unanimously in this House. Thank you.
I recognize member on a motion. No, you go.
Member for Labrador West and Lake Melville.
Okay. The motion is as followed. From the member of Lake Melville, seconded by the member of Labrador West, and this is to adopt. We will not open debate on this. We will only vote to include it into the resolution. It is as follows. 1E, inclusion of fentanyl testing strips along with naloxone and encourage use of the 1-800 number available to people who are using alone to prevent a potential overdose. And it would also add 2, will include the Labrador Marine Ferry. I will read it again. 1E, inclusion of fentanyl testing strips along with naloxone and encouraging use of the 1-800 number available to people who are using alone to prevent potential overdose. Number 2, will include the Labrador Marine Ferry. Does anyone need it to be read again? Okay, we will now move into the vote. All in favor of adopting this amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The motion has passed. Congratulations. Yes, so this amendment is included in the resolution now, so you can include it in your debate. And those members who have not spoken yet, you still have 10 minutes to speak about the resolution and share your thoughts and ideas. The critic for transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I raised today in full support of this bill by my fellow Minister of Justice and Public Safety. As the only thing, as the Minister of Transportation, I'm actually happy to hear that the leader of opposition stays strongly with the speed cameras, the point number 3 that we have in the bill. And I'm very surprised that leader's critic of transportation stands against it and says it's useless, while in fact the cameras are proven to save lives and to prevent more accidents. To add to the leader's remarks on the study was in fact conducted in the province 2 years ago, as mentioned by the minister. It was conducted by Genoptic, and it was conducted throughout the 3-month period in Montpellier and Paradise, where the 6 cameras were used, as a result of which 94,000 violations were recorded, 25% of which were recorded as the driver speeding over 20 kilometers over the posted limit. Therefore, once again, the study was already done. On average, it was about 500 speeding tickets a day in just 2 cities with just 6 cameras, meaning that if we go over the whole province with more cameras, the numbers will be much, much higher. Once again, it was already proven that the problem is real. We need a solution for that, and speed cameras are a practical solution for speeding. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. The member for Mount Scio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to say that I appreciate this bill, but I stand in opposition for the following reasons. First, I find it hard to understand where the funds for this bill is coming from. Will it come from the people of the province through taxes? My next reason is, why not focus more on stopping illicit substances from coming into the province? Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to congratulate the member from Mount Scio on their first speech in the House. The member for St. John's West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I rise today in full support of the overall intention of the resolution to ensure safety and well-being of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. While I commend the overall spirit of the motion, I believe that certain clauses require careful reconsideration to ensure both effectiveness and fairness. Pertaining to Clause 1, Madam Speaker, the significant portion of our population has experienced opioid addictions and death by overdose as well. I'm sure that many members of the House have lost loved ones, possibly even due to opioid overdose. And this situation is incredibly disheartening. And I commend the Minister for drafting such an incredible draft to address this concern. However, while the resolution calls for widespread training and the distribution of Naxalon kits, I believe that it's better if we take a more targeted approach to focus on training in communities where opioid addictions are most prevalent, and this can ensure a better usage in the distribution of the government funding. With Class 2, I also support efforts to decrease trafficking of illicit substances and firearms, and placing additional security personnel at the Channel Port Obasque and Argenta crossing is a necessary step. However, I do caution the use of random searches, and I instead urge that we possibly kind of look into the way that they do it in airports, where they have like technology such as x-rays to screen baggage, and then if there's any alerts that are found, then we conduct searches that way. I feel like that would be a better approach to take rather than conducting what is said in the resolution random. It isn't clear in that sense. In Clause 3, I believe that it does require great reconsideration. I believe that the clause does look towards ideas to detect speeding in our province. However, there's no way to prevent it, and that wasn't really addressed in this clause. And statistics do show that a large portion of the individuals that that are prevalent for speeding in our province are a lot of the younger drivers and those who just got their license. And I'm thinking that maybe we can even add to the resolution that for Class 5 Level 1 drivers, they're only novice for 12 months after they get their full license. Maybe we can extend that period to 24 months. So this can allow them to kind of gain more confidence in driving, especially in within this province, and increase their confidence on the road and ensure their utmost safety and well-being. And I feel like if we can address the root cause of the issue with speeding, we can really ensure that it's reduced in our province. And I feel like that is a better approach at looking at it rather than just looking at ways to detect speeding. And now on to Clause 4. I strongly support this clause and commend the minister for including that we should make sure that no demographic is discriminated or stereotyped in any way, shape, or form. And I'm really glad that the minister did include this in one of their clauses. So overall, I support the general direction of the resolution, and I firmly believe that with a few modifications, we can balance safety and security with cost and fairness. Thank you.
I'd like to congratulate the member on their first speech in the House. The member for Buren Grand Bank.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have nothing really to say on the third and fourth clauses. I think that speed cameras and explicitly trying to be non-discriminatory in how this bill is implemented and carried out are both solid measures that I think we need. And the first clause overall, I think, is pretty good, increasing both the amount of people with training to address opioid overdoses and the availability of naloxone kits. To me, is no less important than promoting CPR training and making AEDs more readily accessible. Emphasizing providing this training to those who interact with the public is, to me, wise, because this not only encompasses a wide range of professions, because of their nature, it's likely to bring them into contact with people who might be struggling with drug use. Covering the transportation and salary costs for these workers removes some significant potential barriers to receiving that training. And I think encouraging town councillors to receive it has value just beyond increasing the number of people with the training. To me, having your town councillors get this shows leadership and sends the message that your town and its council want to look out for you and keep you safe. That's a good thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, Clause 2 is where I have a bit more to say. As was said, Marine Atlantic is a Crown corporation. It exists because Canada has a constitutional obligation to have ferry service between Port aux Basques and North Sydney. Its job is to provide that ferry service, connecting us with our Atlantic neighbours and the rest of the country. It's kind of like an aquatic extension of the Trans-Canada Highway, allowing things to move from place to place and province to province. Investigating and managing illegal activities like drug smuggling along the way is not Marine Atlantic's job. That's law enforcement's. The RCMP actually conducted a traffic stop, just as you would say out by an overpass on a long weekend, at the ferry terminal in Port aux Basques in 2002. And they seized millions of contraband cigarettes with the help of police dogs, just like this resolution calls for partnering with Marine Atlantic to do. But it's not Marine Atlantic that has the tools and expertise for that, and those who do have that expertise and jurisdiction are the ones who need to be included here as well. And yes, as the critic mentioned, people absolutely do have a right to privacy and to move freely. But if my professor, Dr. Pullman, got me to think about any legal document in our course on important cases in health ethics, It would be that Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms good old notwithstanding clause, where it turns out you actually can limit charter rights. But when you do, it A, has to be for a legitimate reason, such as in the interest of wider public safety, and the way you do it has to make sense for what you're trying to accomplish, and it can't limit those other rights in a way that's unreasonable for what you're trying to do. And I don't think an odd stop at the ferry terminal or in a search when you're trying to, get on a boat that's going to be on the ocean between provinces is an unreasonable thing to do. But at the end of the day, we can't hope to accomplish the goal of reducing amounts of illicit drugs and weaponry entering the province if we only look at Marine Atlantic. It's only one of multiple ways to smuggle things into the province, even just by water. And as first written before the amendment, which was excellent, it completely ignores Labrador and its considerable borders. Now, that wouldn't be a problem if drugs weren't an issue in Labrador, but they absolutely are. And that's especially a problem given that if someone were to be struggling with these substances or facing violence from illicit weapons, then the resources to handle those issues are probably more sparse if they're available in someone's community at all. And this absolutely affects people in Labrador. I mean, just this past March, leaders in Sheshatshiu decided to barricade their community and start checking vehicles entering the town because the community's members are dealing with a big increase in drug trafficking and seeing a lot of the negative impacts that that's having on the community. But complex crises like that don't just happen out of nowhere. In the same article discussing that barricade, the people of Sheshatshiu also noticed the crises that they faced with other substances and with suicide in the past. And that's no doubt linked to traumas that are stemming from ongoing colonialism. And one of the ideas that I've really taken with me from my background in psychology and neuroscience is that when someone reaches a place where they're abusing substances, they've gotten there because they're trying to get away from something else. Abuse, trauma, pain, struggles with physical or mental health, the sense that they have no future, no worth, no opportunities, no real option to do something else about any of it. Any of those things are things that substance abuse gives people a way to cope with when they don't have anything else. However bad the effects of substance abuse can be, someone is at that point because whatever they're trying to cope with was even worse. I actually read an article in the journal Substance Use and Addiction from 2021 discussing the role of law enforcement in responding to the opioid crisis. They interviewed a number of police officers who estimated that about half of the situations that they face on the job involve someone misusing opioids. They also noted that the majority had received naloxone training and had actually administered it multiple times. But they also expressed frustration that there are so few options available to actually help people after they overdose and to look at the root causes and help them reach a place where they're safer. That's the bigger problem. You can't prevent the next overdose if the person just does not have the support or resources to be able to try and stop using drugs. And unfortunately, I've also come across multiple peer-reviewed studies which have found that seizing illicit drugs actually has a statistically significant link to increases in fatal opioid overdoses. That's right. When law enforcement seizes illicit drugs, there's a statistically significant increase in the number of people who fatally overdose, and that increase persists for some time afterwards. It's kind of like the mythical Hydra. Crack down on one drug, and a stronger one that's easier both to smuggle and to overdose on takes its place. People are afraid. They might not have the supply that they're used to. The drugs are probably more likely to be cut. And all of that makes those people less safe and more likely to overdose or suffer when the opposite is the goal. People need options to cope with the things they're dealing with before they end up turning to substance use. And if someone does still decide to use substances, they have to be able to do so in a way that minimizes the risks involved. Having those supports and resources would make the people of this province safer than a big drug bust ever will.
I would like to welcome MHA Jody Wall from the District of Cape St. Francis to the Speakers Gallery. Let's give him a warm welcome. The member for, the Honourable the Premier.
I move to adopt an amendment seconded by the official leader of the opposition in the spirit of bipartisan collaboration and working together for the people of this province.
Fabulous. The amendment is as followed. Clause 2, I. 2CII will read, trailers, ATVs, etc. by electronic ticket randomization software. And this is to adopt, so we will not open debate on it, we will just vote. I will read it again. Clause 2CII will read, trailers, ATVs, etc. by electronic ticket randomization software. Does anybody need me to reread it? Okay, we will move to a vote. All in favor of adopting this amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Congratulations, it has passed. The member for Placentia West Bellevue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I want to congratulate the Minister of Justice and Public Safety for putting together a very well thought out bill. First of all, I want to talk about naloxone kits. Naloxone kits are used for opioid overdose and can reverse the potentially fatal effects of an overdose. Let's not forget that opioids are a class of natural, semi-synthetic, and synthetic drugs. So this can also include pain meds for pain. What happens when an older patient has a prescription for pain meds after surgery and they accidentally take more than prescribed? Or maybe they have dementia or Alzheimer's and they forget the last time they took their pain meds. This can cause a drug overdose, and I think by more people being educated on how to use naloxone kits, it can save accidents like this one. Other members across the way have said that this needs to take a more upstream approach and focus more on why we need naloxone kits in the first place. So if the new security measures that would be in place in the Marine Atlantic and the Labrador Ferry are a supposed breach in Section 8 in the Charter, echoing the fact that a very similar search happens in the airports every day, then how are we supposed to find the drugs when they're coming into our province? Moving on to Clause 3, speeding cameras. The clause says cameras will be in more rural areas where there are long, straight stretches of road. As the member from Lab West mentioned, Meadows apparently would not need one of these cameras. But isn't that just what Meadows is and many other rural communities in Newfoundland and Labrador, just a long stretch of road? There are young teenagers everywhere speeding up and down roads when there's potholes and many more damages to our roads across the province. But I am curious to see how exactly the cameras will be divided throughout the province. So with a few tweaks, I am proud to be in full support of this bill.
The member for Lewisport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. When I was reading this resolution, I did agree that it tries to address very important issues, use and distribution of illegal substances, as well as the speeding cause motor vehicle accidents definitely can cause families and people to suffer from it severely. But I also did agree that the funds allocation wouldn't be the most effective to solve these issues. First thing first, I do see already implementation of naloxone kits around the province in the public spaces, in Memorial University, but I do not see implementation of insulin or epinephrine kits like this. 80% of Newfoundland population in Labrador suffers from diabetes, and they spend up to 12% of their family household income on the drugs that can help them with its management. And it can be a severe issue for low-income populations as well. But similarly, from my studies of immunology, I do say that people can be affected from allergies that can cause anaphylaxis in any point of their life without even ever experiencing it before. And I do not see any 200 epinephrine pens around the province available like naloxone kits. So overall, I think the 42 cases per 100,000 population that happen in Newfoundland that causes opioid-induced hospitalization is not that significant of an issue compared to, for example, British Columbia that has its numbers at around 1,500. And I do believe that allocating $2 million population funds into dealing with diseases like diabetes and allergies can severely more efficiently benefit the population. and that affects every fifth person in this room, for example. Regarding the third clause of the resolution, I do think that speed cameras are effective. It was already proven for motor vehicle accidents, decrease in rates, but I also do think that it prevents it only within the areas of this camera. Many navigation software, including Google Maps, would be able to show you where the cameras are located, and the drivers might stop speeding at these areas, but then they can continue doing it without the out of reach of these cameras. And I do think that the current fines for the speeding ranging in between $50 and $750 are not significant threat for these speeders. They can repeat it later on while they undergoing these fines, and they can continue doing it without suffering significantly financially. So I think increasing funds or increasing number of police officers that can prevent the speeding from happening is the more effective way to deal with this speeding. And finally, I do think that the resolution is pointing at important issues, but it tries to solve it at their own time and their own manner. So that's it from me. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I'd like to congratulate the member from Lewisports on their first speech. The member for Harbor, Maine.
We just want to let everybody know that the amendments that have passed are already in the
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would like to congratulate the Minister on a well-thought-out and established bill with the intent to preserve and protect the health and safety of Newfoundlanders. Given that this bill aims to provide at least 80% of municipalities with immediate naloxone kits, and the fact that training is not mandated nor required, but instead something that one may volunteer or have the option to complete or train in, how will it be seen that there will be somebody in each municipality to administer kits on towards someone in need? Given that we intend to put forth at least $2 million, and in that $500,000 being towards kits, how will it be ensured that there will in fact be someone trained and able to use the kit in each municipality? Just because you provide a kit across varying municipalities does not mean that they will be useful without the mandate of specific populations. In the same manner, moving on to Clause 2, something that stood out to me is the ability to enforce these security measures. As it currently stands, Marine Atlantic has their own security measures that exist. Who's to say that hiring more individuals will uphold new tasks regardless of new technology that is bought and not go back to old ways with extra people? In turn, how will this service slow down our ferries, and how will it affect ferry quality and tourism in Newfoundland and Labrador, overall impacting our economy? And lastly, in Clause 3, it is intended that speed cameras will be placed on long rural roads and sections of the Trans-Canada Highway. This directly negatively impacts rural Newfoundlanders who use these roads more frequently than those in the city. This directly contradicts Clause 4 that intends to keep safe specific demographics at higher risk of increased security, which by focusing cameras on rural Newfoundland would do exactly that, potentially benefiting urbanites in Newfoundland in respect to rurals. Overall, this bill has good foundations to protect and preserve the health and safety of Newfoundland and Labradorians.
I'd like to congratulate the member from Harbor, Maine on their first speech in the House. And the member for Grand Falls, Windsor, Buckens.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. I would like to comment on Clause 1B as well, into considering conflicts that will occur in a short amount of time if we only make this opportunity of training only optional. Will municipalities accept this offer once they realize this? Opioid users cannot make it in time to the hospital, especially in rural conditions, if only the training in municipalities isn't given on a mandatory basis. In perspective to the users who can turn to in situations like this, if the training was only optional and not mandatory, because realistically, these users have the issue to not even making it to the hospital for the naloxone alone. They only have a small amount of time to preserve the opioid temporarily. Naloxone is a training and saving tool. Training will give the user to have the accessibility in towns and local service districts if needed. Thank you.
I would like to congratulate the member from Grand Falls Buckins on their first speech in the House. Congratulations. The member for Burgeo-Lapoille.
I stand today in agreement with this resolution. I do believe it's time to help curb the illicit substances coming into both Newfoundland and Labrador. And I think security at entry points is very important. We already does that at airports. Everyone gets random searches, or not everyone, but you can get picked for a random search at any time. So why not do that at ferries as well? I can't really speak a whole lot on illicit substances. It's not my area of expertise, but things need to change, and it's quite obvious. What I can speak on, though, is the speed cameras. So I live in a highly remote community. We're 2.5 hours away from Corner Brook. It's 2 hours of no service. And it's a relatively straight road. There's some nice few curves, don't get me wrong. So putting a speed camera there would be nice. It's 80-kilometer-an-hour road. Most people do not do that unless you're a tourist in the area. But the question would be for me is, when you put that camera there, everyone's going to know within a month or two of where that camera is. So they're going to slow down before that camera, and you're not going to catch them speeding. So even though it would be a great area for a speed camera, would it really have any benefit? And then even around the community of Burgeo, it's basically a circle. Most people drive around circles and circles and circles like pretty much every day. And a lot of people speed. And you can't really do speed cameras there either. When you know where the speed camera is, you're going to slow down before it. Or at least I know a lot of people in my community, that's what would happen. So I'm kind of thinking, too, we have not had a cop or a police officer in Burgeo now for 2 to 3 years, I believe, and we still don't to this day. The police of Burgeo would service both Burgeo, Ramea, Francois, and Grey Rivers. We're 2.5 or little over 2 hours away from Stevensville, which would be our next closest police station. So wouldn't it rather just put a little bit of money towards maybe getting more police in these areas? They can patrol the roads a bit more. We get a visit from Stevensville Police maybe once or twice a month. Could be wrong on that number, but still. So having actual police in the area, patrolling so much of the highway, and that might be a little bit of a good idea. I really do hope to see this resolution passed today. I do think there needs to be a couple fixes to it, but I surely hope it passes. Thank you.
The member for Harbour Grace, Portagrave.
I really first want to say thank you for so very good and incredibly important resolution. We should to be proactive, not reactive. And I agree with naloxone kits, but I really want to mention a few important points about cameras. So how will government make sure that speeding tickets are fair for everyone? Even people with low income, as was mentioned before about a child in mom's car and its life, there can happen different situation. And some people may not be able to get a lawyer and go in court and appeal a fine. And also, before spend so much money on cameras, we could look into another methods to slow down people. As the best slow down people, it's physics, and we could make roads narrower so people feel less safe to speeding, and make roads wide so drivers are focused to turn and slow down, and trees to the side of road, which makes driver feel close and drive slower. Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations to the member from Harbour Grace Portagrave on their first speech in the House. The member for Ferryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I just want to congratulate the Minister on Justice and Public Safety for a well-written resolution, and I want to congratulate all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to giving great amendments to this resolution so we can get it passed during this session. However, I do have some concerns about the efficiency. How can we implement this resolution to help Newfoundlanders and Labradorians? Just some regular examples I think we could do is for Clause 4, I think we can establish a independent oversight body to analyze these random selections to make sure there is no bias, especially towards racial and gender bias, because we do not want. Because we're all human and people have biases, and I think an independent oversight body could eliminate those factors. I also think overall another thing we can do is I think we can add a timeline so how we can implement the major components of this resolution in a timeline. Another moment I'm also thinking of is also for publishing annual reports to see how we are fighting drug overdoses and drug trafficking in this province, and letting the public kind of know what we're doing, how we're helping them, how we're serving them. Overall, I think if we can have some more amendments to put those safeguards in place, I think we can get this resolution passed.
The member for Corner Brook.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to take a moment to appreciate the minister's bill. It was well written and really thought of. I just want to say that I fully agree with it. And why? Because the overdose deaths in Newfoundland and Labrador has risen, especially from potent opioids like fentanyl. Many communities, especially rural ones, don't have fast access to emergency help. The kit saves lives, and it can reverse an opioid overdose on the spot. This resolution ensures training is accessible and free, including travel and salary coverage, so no one is left out due to money or distance. Having town council members trained means someone local is always prepared to respond before paramedics can arrive. This is a preventative, community-based approach to a serious public health crisis. For fair security and legal trafficking, Marine Atlantic is a major entry point of Newfoundland and Labrador, and drugs or weapons brought into the ferry traffic can contribute to violence, addiction, and crime in local communities. By adding detection dogs, x-ray machines, and more workers, this resolution aims to cut off dangerous supply routes before these substances reach streets or schools. It balances security with passenger comfort and is focused on prevention, not punishment. It provides real practical funding, showing the plan is meant before than just words. For the speed camera expansion, Newfoundland has a lot of long rural roads where speeding is common and accidents can be deadly. Every day to go to my main town, which is Corner Brook, because I live across the water, I have to take the highway every day, and everybody's speeding to get to where they go, and it's very dangerous and it's scary. The speed cameras have been shown to reduce speeding and save lives. They hold drivers accountable without needing constant police presence. The cameras don't profile people, they only record speeding vehicles. So enforcement is automatic and unbiased. Fines from speeders can potentially go back into public safety or road improvement. For equity and inclusion, government policies sometimes unfairly affect certain groups, especially Indigenous people, peoples of color, low-income individuals, and rural residents. The resolution directly acknowledges those risks and makes fairness a core part of the plan. It commits to community consultation, reviews after implementation, and gives citizens a way to voice concerns. It's a rare example of policy that says, if this hurts people unfairly, we will fix it. So to summarize this all up, you might agree with the resolution because it invests in prevention, not just a reaction. for real crises like overdose, weapons, and road deaths. Supports communities across the whole province, including rural and remote ones. Creates jobs in ferry security and training programs. Tries to reduce harm without increasing discrimination, and promises to listen and adapt. Thank you.
The member for Fortune Bay, Cape Lejeune.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's really nice to see all the very passionate debates and conversations around this bill. It's not a known secret. I am from out around a very rural community. The one thing I have to speak out against this bill that I'm not seeing in there, is that rural communities do lack the access of self-service. So in incidents of speed cameras, of accidents, there are parts of a drive going out to Fogo Island where I'm to. It's a dead zone. It's about an hour and a half of just, you have no self-service. In case of accidents, in case of any type of emergency, there is no way of getting a hold of someone to get help. I think this is something we need to expand across all of Newfoundland and Labrador. Again, especially in rural communities where I feel like this bill is truly lacking on bringing focus to residents out around rural Newfoundland and Labrador, and I would like to see a little bit more work put in that avenue. Thank you.
Motion to debate. What are you? Okay, I recognize the member on a motion to debate, seconded by the critic of transportation. The amendment is as followed. Clause 2 will read, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will partner with Marine Atlantic, Argentia Ferry, the Labrador Marine Ferry, to implement more security procedures when leaving Quebec and entering Labrador, to ensure any illicit substances and illegal firearms do not enter our province, and add more infrastructure to ensure there are physical spaces to conduct these searches. I will read it again. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will partner with Marine Atlantic, Argentia Ferry, the Labrador Marine Ferry, to implement more security procedures when leaving Quebec and entering Labrador, to ensure any illicit substances and illegal firearms do not enter our province, and add more infrastructure to ensure there are physical spaces to conduct these searches. We will now move to a vote to open debate on this amendment. All in favor of opening debate, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay, we will now open debate. This debate will be open for 30 minutes, and each member has 5 minutes to contribute if they choose to do so. Yes, okay. The critic of Justice and Public Safety, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Myself and the critic of transportation brought forward this amendment as we think it is essential to have a security stop when leaving Quebec and entering Labrador.
Here.
This is primarily due to the fact that when you come into Newfoundland off the Marine Atlantic Ferry, off the Argentia Ferry, this bill proposes that we add more sufficient security there, but Labrador is also part of our province as well. Therefore, it's important that we ensure that it's not entering any way of our province at all. We brought forward this bill in hopes that you will agree with us when we say that illicit substances and firearms are no good in any setting of our province. Not here on the island, not in Labrador. As well as this amendment brings forward that we will create infrastructures in the Marine Atlantic and the Argentia Ferry. With this, we meant that once you enter the parking lot, you will be entering a place in your vehicle where security checks and these randomized selections can happen. This is to ensure privacy, security, and safety while in the parking lot so that your own personal items are not exposed at an environmental right out in the open to everybody. These infrastructures will be budgeted for and accounted for under what our minister had applied. They aren't specifically going to be like individually someone walking through the same as you would an airport, but something similar in the sense that it's something that you can drive through, get your vehicle searched if you were to be randomly selected, and then move on. And so that you're not exposing the public. Thank you.
The Minister of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As of this moment, I'm a little bit unclear as to how I feel about this amendment. The Argentia Ferry with Marine Atlantic actually goes to Nova Scotia, so I don't understand how that fits in with Labrador and Quebec. And there's also the Channel Port Basque Ferry, which also goes to the same destination in Nova Scotia, which was not mentioned in the amendment. As well, I am a little bit unclear as to the services or the attempt for strengthened security, I guess, between Quebec and Labrador, as we have passed that Labrador Marine would be incorporated into this resolution. But Labrador Marine has ferry service between Labrador and Newfoundland. It doesn't? That's weird. Okay, new information has come to me. That's, okay, so I guess that does straighten some things out, that it would make sense to work with Quebec and Labrador Marine to strengthen the security of trafficking and such. Yes, I yield my time.
The member for Labrador West.
So just to clear some things up, especially for the critic of public safety or justice and public safety, I'm unaware of everybody's time that they've spent on the Trans-Labrador Highway, but I've spent some hours on there, right? When you leave, so there are 3 prime entrances into Labrador through Quebec. I'm sure there's side roads all up and down the border, but there are 3 main entrances. You can come in on the Quebec North Shore and Labrador Railway, coming in down from Shefferville. You can come in through Highway 500 from Fermont to Labrador West, or you can come into Blanc-Sablon, where you get the ferry coming down the coast. So Blanc-Sablon is just like, if you look at it on a map, it's the overhang of what's underneath the shape of Labrador. When you leave Blanc-Sablon, you come over to St. Barb on this ferry that is funded by the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. If you're putting security in Blanc-Sablon, number one, there's not that many people in Blanc-Sablon.
You probably know where it is.
And you should probably know where it is. But coming in, pardon me, coming into Labrador from Quebec, you don't need a security checkpoint type thing. But even the ferry, like, I agree with the security on the ferry. It just seems all over the place. And, you know, obviously the ferry does leave Quebec, but that is not the part of Quebec where these things are coming from, right? That is way, way over here. The part of Quebec where these things are coming from are coming directly up the highway into Labrador West, over to Goose Bay, and places like that. It's not, you know, illicit substances and firearms are not coming from Blanc-Sablon. It is an isolated community, and if they are coming from Blanc-Sablon, they're being supplied by a bigger urbanized center like Montreal, Quebec City, those places.
The member for Cape St. Francis.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As of this time, I feel compelled to oppose the amendment, not on the grounds of the substance of the amendment, but because we still have no plans whatsoever for the funding of any of the ideas which we've discussed throughout this debate. The first, I believe it was the first, one of the amendments which we passed already made an allotment for the Labrador Ferry, which will increase the original number, which I believe was totaled at $9.5 million of just the expenses listed in the resolution. Nothing, for example, about the demographic survey, nothing the cost, rather, regarding the demographic survey has been mentioned. There are lots of other hidden costs which we have not been able to tally. So the more we add, the more we're going to have to spend. And until we can come up with a plan for funding the initial resolution, which we have not, it's simply not possible to support another amendment which will increase the cost even further with no plan whatsoever for the funding behind it. As of right now, we don't have an amendment regarding the funding, but hopefully one will be coming soon. And I don't want to hijack conversation away from the discussion about the ferries, but until we have an idea of the economic costs and the plan to supply them, there is not much point, I think, in debating specifics about which ferries we're going to fund and which ones, or which ferry securities we're going to fund and which ones we're not, if we have no mechanism for funding whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to welcome the MHA for Waterford Valley, Jamie Korab, in the public gallery, if we could give him a warm welcome. Seeing no members rise. Oh, the Honorable the Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As indicated by our Minister of Justice and Public Safety, our government cannot fully support this amendment. I think specifically on the basis of understanding who's responsible for what. We are absolutely responsible for that ferry, but evidently, as you've mentioned, as the member has mentioned, I would like to retract that.
Thank you.
We don't have any authority over Blanc-Sablon. What we do have authority over is every entry into the province, every mass transportation in the province, and the authority and the mandate to protect all of the people who will be harmed by the continued negligence.
Order, order. Thank you.
They aren't coming from Blanc-Sablon. And that's why I feel this amendment by the opposition is misguided. In its attempt to try and answer the question of how does Labrador fit into all of this, which, as clearly we've been trying to answer ourselves, we can't support your attempt to do so. If there were to be another amendment potentially addressing the unique nature of both the needs of the citizens of Labrador and also the unique geography of the Blanc-Sablon Ferry St. Barb situation, I think we would be happy to consider.
Thank you. See no members rise, we will move to the critic of transportation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to echo the concerns of the House here today. I think that they are all important points raised. And I would also like to give my full support to this amendment by my honourable colleague here on the opposition benches. I think that she did a great job critiquing this bill by the government benches here today. And we will do our best to hold this government account when it comes to improving public safety and justice for all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Okay. See no members rise, we will move to a vote. I will read the amendment again just to give you a refresher. Clause 2 will read, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will partner with Marine Atlantic Argentia Ferry, the Labrador Marine Ferry, to implement more security procedures when leaving Quebec and entering Labrador, to ensure any illicit substances and illegal firearms do not enter our province, and also add more infrastructure to ensure that there are physical spaces to conduct these searches. Okay, we will now move in to a vote. All in favor of adopting this amendment say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Nay. The nays have it. Okay, we will move to a standing vote. Okay, please be seated. All in favor, please rise. When I recognize you, please be seated. The member for Placentia West Bellevue, the member for Mount Scio, the leader of the official opposition, the critic of justice and public safety, and the critic of transportation, and the member for St. John's Center. All opposed, please rise. The member for Waterford Valley, the Honorable the Premier, the Minister of Justice and Public Safety, the Minister of Transportation, the Minister for Burgeo-Lapoil, the member for St. George's Humber, the member for Corner Brook, the member for Lewisport, the member for Buren Grand Bank, the member for Exploits, the member for Fogo Island Cape Friels, Fortune Bay Cape Lahoon, the member for Harbor Grace Portagrave, the member for Harbor Maine, the member for Cape St. Francis, the member for Labrador West, the member for Lake Melville, the member for Virginia Waters Pleasantville, and the member for, I lost my spot, the member for Fairyland. And the nays have it. The amendment does not pass.
You've never been there. I can't wait to take you on a road trip.
Seeing no members rise, I now welcome the Minister of Justice and Public Safety to make their closing remarks. Okay, you can bring it forward. Yeah, collect it. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Madam Speaker.
Motion?
Motion to adopt the amendment put forth by myself and seconded by the critic of justice and public safety.
Okay, thank you. This is motion to adopt. We will not be opening debate. Clause 1A would be
Madam Speaker, may I motion to debate the amendment? Do we have
Sure.
time? Okay, thank you.
So this is to open debate on the following amendment. Clause A would be changed to read, all first responders will be required to take opioid overdose training as well as training in the use of naloxone kits. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will provide funding to our municipalities and public services to cover the operational costs and transportation for this required service. Clause 1B would also be changed to read, all schools ranging from K to 12 in Newfoundland and Labrador will have a minimum of 2 designated staff members trained to deal with opioid overdoses as well as training in naloxone kits. In addition, our junior and senior high schools will offer mental health and addiction awareness courses for our youth, as well as naloxone training will be a requirement for all students before graduation. Okay, gonna have a vote to open debate on this amendment. Yes, I can read it. So clause 1A would read, all first responders will be required to take opioid overdose training as well as training in the use of naloxone kits. In the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will provide funding to all our municipalities and public services to cover the operational costs and transportation for this required service. Clause 1B would read, all schools ranging from K to 12 in Newfoundland and Labrador will have a minimum of 2 designated staff members trained to deal with opioid overdoses as well as training in naloxone kits. In addition, our junior and senior high schools will offer mental health and addiction awareness courses for our youth, as well as naloxone training will be a requirement for all students before graduation. Do you need me to read it again, or that's okay?
It's a bit of a longer one. Do we want to put it in the group?
Yeah, we will after we vote on it. We are voting to open debate on the following amendment. Yes? Can I read it again? Sure. Clause A would read, all first responders will be required to take opioid training as well as training in the use of naloxone kits. The government of Newfoundland and Labrador will provide funding to our municipalities and public services to cover operational costs and transportation for this required service. Clause 1B would read, all schools ranging from K to 12 in Newfoundland and Labrador will have a minimum of 2 designated staff members trained to deal with opioid overdoses as well as training in naloxone kits. In addition, our senior high and junior high schools will offer mental health and addiction awareness courses for our youth, as well as naloxone training will be a requirement for all students before graduation. A copy of this will be shared after we vote to open debate. All in favor of opening debate on the proposed amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The critic of transportation, you now have 5 minutes to share your thoughts on this amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe that this amendment will improve the lives of almost every Newfoundlander and Labradorian. I believe that almost every Newfoundlander and Labradorian have experienced the issues that we face as a province when it comes to mental health and addiction issues. It's an issue that ranges right across the province and something that we need to act now to resolve. In this amendment, we will be offering courses for our schools, for our junior high and high schools, to offer mental health and addictions awareness courses, something that we don't already do. We do it sort of through our health curriculum, but it's nothing that is required or nothing that is worked into, that's worked into our curriculum. So that is something that I want to put forth in this amendment. as well as I think that it is beneficiary for all graduating students, especially before they graduate. Because in a lot of schools across the province, you start with grad week, everyone goes out in grad week, and we all knows what happens when teenagers go out partying. Some things can go wrong. So that's why in this amendment, we will make it a requirement for all students before they graduate to make sure that they have this training that is so crucial to saving lives in this province. Also, a requirement of 2 staff members. Those can be teachers, those can be nurses, those can be a cafeteria lady, it can be a janitor, it can be whoever that's on the school staff, have the required training to deal with opioid overdoses, and to perhaps even give the training themselves. These will be people that will be specialized in this in this service, and would be able to inform our students and give the proper information that our students need to be able to live a healthier and better life. So, Madam Speaker, I'll yield the rest of my time for debate, and I'd like to thank the opposition critic for seconding my amendment.
The Minister of Justice and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As with the other amendment that was open for debate, I am a little bit uncertain of my feelings towards this. I think that if this amendment had been to add to 1A and B rather than changing 1A and B, that I would be more on board. However, with first responders having the training and being equipped with naloxone kits, as far as I'm aware, paramedics and ambulances already have the training and the resources. Pardon? Firefighters and police officers do not, but that also limits that. I think that it's important that we give the opportunity to those that work with the public, instead of trying to solely mandate, like having people in schools. If we try to mandate school workers, whether it be teachers, nurses, cafeteria workers, that we just offer instead of mandating it it gives people, a choice and the opportunity to be involved with their community and with the people around them rather than being told what to do. And I think that it's important to offer it to anyone that works with the public, directly with people, because there is that opportunity to be more involved, to get that education and that understanding of the things that happen in the province. I also think that it is important that we do offer it to municipalities, where in this amendment it would change that completely to focus more on schools, which that is, as I'm understanding correct, it changes 1A and 1B instead of adding, correct? Yeah, sure. Yeah, so that I cannot get behind so much, because I think that it is important that we see support and education and understanding throughout all our communities, not just in schools and not just with first responders. So had that been added as opposed to changed, I would be much more on board. But right now, I think I'm leaning more towards not being comfortable passing this as is.
The Honorable the Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm curious how many more times the opposition will continue to impose mandates on the free citizens of Newfoundland and Labrador. I believe I'm in the House of Assembly, surrounded by a number of intelligent, incredibly busy, and incredibly hardworking high school students. And I have no doubt that at the drop of a hat, anybody in this room wouldn't do whatever they could to help out their friend who is in a situation related to an overdose or something of the sort. But what we can't do is ignore the massive swaths of our peers and our coworkers and our classmates who don't want this training, who are already burdened by the school system that is not built for them, who are already incredibly busy trying to make a name for themselves, and who are additionally suffering from a cost of living crisis unbeknownst to this province. If the opposition cannot see the implicit links between cost of living and levels of stress, cost of living and levels of responsibility, if they cannot see the ways that further mandates of training and further responsibilities imposed on the average Newfoundlander and Labradorian, I do not trust their work. Thank you. I yield my time.
The member for Placentia West Bellevue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just noting back to what the Premier said about mandating these certifications on people, I'm a nursing student. I am mandated to have a first aid course every 3 to 4 years and a basic life support every year to be in school. So I think it'd be a really good idea to have this naloxone kit training. As I'm a nursing student, I don't know how to save someone. I don't know how to give a naloxone kit and help reverse an overdose. And it says here that increasing numbers of deaths and medical emergencies across Canada, noting young people aged 15 to 24 are the fastest growing population requiring hospital care from opioid overdoses. So the people in high school are getting access to these opioids and no one's knowing how to help them. So I think that this amendment is a great idea.
You've already used your time, critic, to present. Oh, was the other one? No, because you
No, not on this one.
Oh, because it was, okay, sorry, my mistake. The critic of justice and public safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am very proud of my fellow critic as they brought forward an important amendment and which discusses mental health. But in particular, Madam Speaker, my critic meant that giving a naloxone kit is very traumatic. Having a friend with an addiction is very traumatic. Going through an addiction yourself is very traumatic. And having a naloxone kit given to you is very traumatic. Adding on a mental health person on each staff, I think, who specializes in mental health, I think is very important as it directly impacts our youth. If I had to give a naloxone kit or use a naloxone kit on someone, that would be a traumatic experience, and I would need further help.
Do you know what's more traumatic? Watching them die in your arms and not being able to help.
Offering that mental support gives people a place to go. Gives people a place to go when after doing that, which our minister didn't mention. They didn't mention the traumatic experience of that. And I understand that that is not the minister's role. However, it is a big impact on justice and public safety. Madam Speaker, the Premier also noted that the cost of living is very expensive. The cost of living for who, Madam Speaker? Because this is for the youth, the high school students. More so, I think it's important that if our government is spending their time and money on $9.5 million to provide these naloxone kits, maybe give them the training, and then we have people going out into our world with this training to build up on.
Here.
I think that my critic did a wonderful job with this amendment, and I also think that my member from across the way hit the nail on the head by saying that this directly impacts our youth, and it is important that we look at our youth more so than just the public as a whole without certain maximums or minimums on that. No range. Thank you.
I recognize member on a motion.
Thank you. I motion that we take an hour and 5-minute recess.
Okay. All in favor, say, who's it second by?
Seconded by the official leader of the opposition.
Fabulous. All in favor of taking a 1 hour and 5 minute and 30 seconds recess, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, fabulous. The motion has passed. It is now recessed. Fabulous job.